Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to IDAGIO Live, the place where classical music happens. It is Thursday, so it must be a visit with Thomas, which I must say, and I'm going to say it again, and I've said it before. One, I love the title, Where Classical Music Happens, but I really love these Thursday conversations because I very often get to speak, especially in the last episodes, with people I've never met before, and tonight's no exception. But you hear about them in the business, and so it's kind of like inviting someone over for a glass of wine to get to know one another, and you're going to get to know with them as much as I'm going to get to know them. So tonight I have a very special guest, as we say in the industry, well, I saw hopefully I was going to say hot property, but Afton Battle is creating so many wonderful waves in the music industry that splash beyond all of the COVID and pandemic trauma that we are still very much in. And I do not by any means make light of that. We are very much in our COVID trauma and our pandemic concerns. And the arts have been hit very, very hard in this period, putting it right up straight in what this interview is going to be also about. But the march goes on, and Afton Battle has been just named the new general director of the Fort Worth Opera Company. And it is just nothing but a great pleasure to meet you, to speak with you. Afton, welcome to the show. Welcome to IDAGIO Live.
Thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure. I must say, I was starstruck in awe and had to catch my breath when I received this invitation to sit down and speak with you. So, thank you so much for having me.
Well, we can just stop right here. I love that. That's. By
We're
the way,
done.
were you? Yeah, we're done. Were you at Westminster still when I came and did some classes? I don't think so.
No, I think you came the years after I left. So, I finished my master's, I'm going to date myself, in 2010.
That doesn't date
So, I think
anybody.
Laura Brooks Rice, or maybe
Ah,
I was an
no.
older master student. I think maybe LBR had you there after that. Or, yeah, it was after because I wasn't there.
And getting off this personal level, sorry folks, I have to ask, are you involved in this sort of Save Westminster project that keeps coming and going, or have they? I mean, they're having such tremendous problems with their board and people wanting to sell it and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was asked to, as an alumna, to help with the campaign behind that, and I didn't. I chose not to for my own personal
Okay.
reasons. But my understanding is that Westminster uh, has been sold and
Aha.
is a part. Well, it was a part of Rider University when I was there, but it was still Westminster Choir College, right? It was just like an appendage of it. But my understanding now is that Rider has taken over all of the music programs and the music
Mm.
curriculum out of that school. At one point, I did hear that a Chinese company, tech or business company, had bought it. And at that point is when I was like, I'm going to walk away from this because I don't know where this is going. Um,
Yeah.
because if we want to preserve the legacy of an institution like Westminster Choir College, we're not going to sell it to a business organization that has no business in the world of music and arts and classical music and training, because the legacy of that school was too great for that.
Well described, and we're going to move off of that. I was involved because they were looking for a bunch of devoted musicians and artists who had been there, taught there, believed in it, the legacy and so forth. You know, don't do what you're about to do. It sounds like it's gone on, and this show isn't about Westminster.
Mhm.
It was, and I hope to some extent still a great musical organization in our country. It has a legacy of tremendous honor in the arts in this country, and we do wish it best and well. But that, from your biography, that's I think about the only place we might have had some intersection. But we've already jumped forward. I would love for me, but also our public,
Mm.
just to get to know you a little bit. You're a Texas native, born in Lubbock, which I think there's a lot of country western folks that are born in Lubbock. And one sings often of Lubbock. I'm not I'm not a Texas boy, but I actually am a closet country music. So, and not so closet after that, after all as well. But tell us, just how you've got some wonderful stories. I love the Traviata story. It's fun, but just give me your 5 minute Wikipedia.
Oh man. So yes, Texan born and raised, born in Lubbock, raised out west in El Paso. Um, Moved around quite a bit, went to moved to Amarillo, and that's when I started my music career, if you will. That's when I became very aware about classical music and classical arts through Mila Gibson and Amarillo Opera. Um, then went to school, my undergraduate at the University of Houston. After that, went off and tried my foot at singing and had tons of young artists, resident artist programs. Spent some time in Europe singing before coming back to the States to do my master's at Westminster, and finished up there in 2010. Came into the world again, emerging right around the time of the recession, which is eerily similar to what we're experiencing now, but different enough because we are not in an economic crash per se where we have lost so much of the economy due to nothing other than this pandemic. But arts organizations are suffering. And so at that time, it was just really difficult to find my footing, to find stabilization. And so I tried and made the conscious decision to pivot into a world of a career of arts administration. And from that time, that was about 2015. From 2015 to 2000, to 2020, it took me all of that time to finally find my way back to arts and more specifically opera. I'd had a career in administration in higher education, then found my way to nonprofit arts work via museums and ballet and theater, straight theater, musical theater, producing theater in New York. And it took all of that time for me to find my way back home, as I call it, as I say, to the world of opera. So here I am.
Wonderful story. Where in that story does the singing Afton fit?
Oh, the singing Afton fits at the front end of that. And honestly, you know, Thomas, like, also fits right now. But the singing Afton is at the front end of that story. So I started singing later on in my life. I was about 18 when I had my first voice lesson and fell madly in love with it after a series of engagement and experiences with opera that I'd never
Mm-hmm.
experienced
Mm-hmm.
before. My first opera, somewhere here in North Texas, I think it was probably at Fort Worth, um, seeing and being in my first production. Um, and then I started down that trail and that road and studied at University of Houston and had a wonderful, wonderful experience at the Moores School of Music. Got a tremendous amount of stage time as a young singer, and then went on to Florida Grand Opera as a resident artist and did the whole circuit of all of those wonderful young artists summer
Yeah, yeah.
programs. And so it was very heavy on, I would say, between 2000 and 2010. I was studying, training, singing, gigging where I could. And coming out of my master's was really the point in which I hit several roadblocks and they just, kind of kept pushing back on me.
What kind of roadblocks? If you don't want, if I don't mean personal, but
Um,
if you can share that.
no, absolutely. So I used to be significantly overweight, and
Huh?
lost a significant amount of weight, uh, not via any surgeries or anything, just weight loss, diet, and exercise. And
Bravo.
so my voice legitimately changed, it shifted. And I did not have the right support from a teacher to technically help me maneuver through that. I'm 6'2", and
You're
have
6'2".
I'm 6'2",
I would have never
and
asked you that, but I can see from your pictures that you are a very tall woman. But 6'2", that's fantastic.
yes, and so
And you were a
had
med
all
and you're a mezzo, right?
no a soprano,
A
a bigger
soprano.
voice soprano, and so I had all of this body to
Can you imagine
support.
you and I doing Traviata together?
I mean,
I'm
listen,
I'm 6'4".
I told Everett McCorvey at the University of Kentucky when we were casting Traviata, I remember saying, "Well, if you want a fuller voice Traviata, you would cast me in it." Uh, I just have to get my coloratura together for, the first act. But acts two and three, I'm there for
So
it.
you
So
were
I
more of
just,
a Tosca
all of this
soprano?
Tosca, Verdi,
Yeah.
then started diving into Wagner, some Puccini. Um, I covered Turandot at
Oh my.
Kentucky Opera, and it was one of the best musical experiences learning that role.
I can imagine.
So big voice soprano, all of this body, lost the weight, and didn't know how to pull it in, and my voice shifted. So, that was a roadblock of having left school because I graduated, and now I'm in this world in New York City trying to find a teacher who could understand where I was coming from vocally and help technically. That was a roadblock, the roadblock of applying application after application, audition after audition to be turned down. But also the realization of I was at an age where I felt that I should be having that break in experience of
Hmm.
covering something
Hmm.
at a regional house or a small compromario role, and those were not happening. Um, and so it was personal setbacks, it was personal, roadblocks, but also career wise, because very understandably, companies were wanting big names to help come in and sell tickets. I get that. Sitting in the position I sit in now as general director, I get that, to help drive that revenue because it's what we need to stay afloat. But it also trailed those of us who were hoping to start, filtering into that system or into that circle, if you will. It really was like one of those not speed, but
Yeah.
like one of those paddle boats that just like, takes you out to sea.
I think that's very legitimate. Actually, this whole COVID crisis times, it concerns me the most for my young colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very busy as pedagogue and producer. Uh, Instead of my off time when I'm not rehearsing, I'm right now, and I can't believe I'm back into a production. I'm in Florence right now rehearsing Così fan tutte, which is incredibly exciting, and I'm actually every day in rehearsal, and it's like,
Fabulous.
wow, I remember what this is like. But all this other, what I really wanted to say was
Absolutely.
that this crisis has been merciless to the younger generation.
Hmm.
Just frighteningly so. Look, I wanted to catch up on one as a pedagogue. I don't want to leave this crisis that you were in with your weight thing. I don't want anybody listening to this think that, aha, I'm really a big person and I need to be a less big person, but I'm going to sacrifice my voice. What you're talking about is a very dramatic, very necessary, and extremely possible shift. You have to trade the torque of the girth that you have as a large person with muscle and a
Hmm.
completely different use of those muscles, and body mapping, yoga, to find out, aha, the waist actually works like this and the abdominal muscles actually give me the anchor that lets the rib cage function, all that kind of stuff, which when you're heavy, that inertia of torque in your body is can be a great help. And my problem with heavier people is that when they get used to that, there's a kind of pushing down in the body. And that is, for me, essentially unhealthy, how I see it, because it's inevitably going to pull on these muscles. But you're absolutely right that by losing a lot of weight, you've got to completely reshift your thought and your paradigm. I just want everybody to know that it's doable. It's a
Hmm.
rough path. It's a good path, but it is a long work. And congratulate you for being so aware of that, and going through that process and sharing that. That is incredibly important for our singers watching this show.
Absolutely. And the one thing that I will say to that is, um, if I knew then what I know now in terms of my body,
Ah.
I think I would have been able to sustain the shift and be more aware of what my body needed and my body was doing. Because when I lost weight, in my younger years, when I was in graduate school, I was a cardio head, I was a vegetarian, and I did
Wow.
hot yoga. Like that was my life, and that's how I lost the weight. And as I got older and as a woman, realizing I needed to build muscle, and that was very important, as you just said, I started weight training. When I started lifting weights and understanding how the legs, the lower part of your body really anchors in for you to lift the weights, to do, squats and barbells and all of this, I refound what we know or people tell us is our center, or our grounding. And my grounding when I started lifting weights, and big, like I push a lot of weight around, when I'm at the gym. And so if I knew then what I know now, I think I would have had the aptitude but also the understanding to navigate through that. And it is completely doable. And that is also why I say a little bit that, you asked, where does the singer Afton fit in at the beginning? I said, and also, now, because I have to be completely honest, if someone, uh, said to me, not that they have the magic potion, but that we could hook that voice right back up, and you could have your career, or you could be singing in you could be singing. I would drop everything that I'm doing, every single thing, because I am a singer first, will always be a singer first, always.
Well, you're just making my heart flutter for a couple of reasons. One, I just love talking to colleagues, and I love participating in somebody's honest process, which you're going through and have. But the idea that you, as a black woman and a black singer, are heading an opera house with this singer and musical mentality, uh, I mean, I tell you, I can't imagine that people are not going to be lining up to want to come and work for you, because opera is a musical art form in
Hmm.
a theatrical context. It is not theater with a music echo.
Mm,
And, and that, you and I shake our heads and say that, but you know as well as I do that this is a little bit of a Sisyphus statement every day, pushing that rock up the hill.
hmm.
Because, and this isn't, I'm not going down sort of that sort of, bitching about regie théâtre and all that sort of stuff, or there's too many productions that, yada, yada, yada. That's not my point. But my point is certainly along those lines, that if we don't understand the phenomenon of opera in the language of music and the power of the singing soul for which
Mm,
we hear thoughts, then why go in the first place? And I'm just
right.
surprised. I'm surprised at how many people. We're getting right into the heart of the interview right now. We'll just jump into it in the deep end here. I'm always surprised at how many people in this industry not only don't know music, they're not particularly musical, and if you actually push on them, they're not particularly concerned about that. I
Yeah.
mean, if I don't know anybody that would hire me to be the head of a Shakespeare theater just because I like, so why do we have all these people, and then take you on top of that? I was very taken aback with this amazing roundtable that went on last June of our black colleagues, in which some very, very important things were said. And one of them was, could we have an HR director in some opera house or some theater, someplace that's actually a person of color? Wouldn't that be helpful? So, I mean,
Hmm.
there's so many things that are coming together and intersecting in your time, Afton. And That's why I just love talking with you. So just go with all those thoughts. I can see your mind reeling. Go, go, go.
No, absolutely. I worked as director of development. All of my experience in nonprofit arts management, what have you, nonprofit, whatever, is in fundraising. I come from a fundraising background, which as a Black woman is very rare to see a Black woman and B, a Black person as a development professional.
True.
So all of my experiences in fundraising. I was the director of development at New York Theater Workshop, off-Broadway theater in New York City, home of Rent. And I had no intersection with that organization. I was like, uh, uh, you know, a deer lost in the woods. It's theater, and I can talk theater, but in the concept of music. I can't talk theater in the
Yeah,
concept
yeah,
of
yeah.
theatrical, straight theater. And so it was very difficult for me uh, to have conversations with donors. I mean, I would read about whatever shows we were doing, but that is one thing to read about it and to regurgitate what you've read. It's
True.
another thing to just speak from the top of your head passionately about something that you feel and love. And so it used to cost me sleep, it cost me drinks, it cost me everything to talk about theater as a director of development for the theater company. And what I've told people is now, it costs me nothing to talk about anything. I never have to have notes. I don't write things down. I don't take note cards when I have to go give a speech. I was just talking at the Rotary Club on Friday, and my colleague was like, "Do you have your speech? I'll put it on note cards." And I was like, "A speech? Why do I need to write it down to talk about opera?" Like it costs me nothing to talk about that. So that is 1,000% correct. And we see, I think, the disconnect sometimes in this industry with those individuals who are in positions of leadership or who are running something, who are not musical, don't have that background that is hooked and rooted in the music part of what opera is, right? Who it does cost them something to
Mm,
talk about this industry or to talk
mm,
about music, to talk about opera, to talk about the musicianship of anything, to think about putting together some kind of programming that offers a resource of, a company, or even if you are a choir of some sort. And so there is that disconnect. There's also that disconnect behind, off stage in the offices, in the staff of individuals who also don't have that same connection and passion to the art form. And there is a road and a cross to bear with that, because you kind of have to drive a stick shift where you want someone talented for the role. You want someone who has the qualifications, who has the talent to do the job, but you also want someone who has the passion to do it, because the
mm,
passion will always override at some point the talent. Like it will always make up for someone not knowing the mechanics of a fundraising campaign. If
mm,
someone is so passionate about the workings of an opera company, of opera theater and community engagement and civic engagement, like that passion will teach them how to how to write a fundraising campaign. So there's like this disconnect a little bit in the industry with that. And then there's the huge disconnect, and it's not even a disconnect, it's just complete lack of equity when it comes to diversity in our field. On stage, meh, off stage, like forget about it. Like it is, there is such a lack of diversity, and that is what so many of our colleagues were talking about
mm.
in June. And I've said very candidly and openly that had it not been for this pandemic, And had it not been for the public murder of George Floyd, I may not be sitting here talking to you
Wow.
because our colleagues would not have had that conversation.
Right.
My name would not have been brought up. People would not have been looking for me. Because
Was Fort Worth looking for someone of an ethnic diversity?
they weren't outwardly looking for someone for a BIPOC individual for this position. They were recruiting for general director,
Mm-hmm.
but they weren't outwardly looking for a Black candidate, Indigenous, or a person of
Right.
color. Um, and
Were
I
they
think
looking for someone? Were they looking for someone with passion?
they were definitely looking for someone with passion. They
Yeah.
were, definitely looking for, someone who was passionate and is passionate about this industry and about the company and about the work. And I think unbeknownst to them, but now I think they see it. They were looking and needed someone who could help to heal the community of Fort
Mm.
Worth with this company
Okay.
because you know Fort Worth and as a whole, Tarrant County in which it sits is a very diverse county. A large population, Latinx population, a large African American population, um, uh, moderate population of white, medium population of Asian American, but it is a very diverse community. And so there was a moment when Fort Worth Opera initiated a program that we still have called Noches de Opera, which was for the Spanish-speaking community. They would present mariachi operas, Spanish-speaking operas, really hooking into and investing into the Hispanic community. And it was not with any real regularity, and it was not with any holistic 365 type of community involvement and engagement. It
Right.
was, we're doing this mariachi opera. So around that opera, we're going to have X, Y, and Z community engagement activities. We'll put on the opera, and then we'll see you next time we do something else. Same thing for the Black community. But as you and I know very well, the standard traditional thing that companies do in the past and even still currently when they want to engage with the Black community is Porgy and Bess. Porgy and Bess had all of these outreach and church programs and things of that nature. Of course, Porgy and Bess sold like wildfire. The Black community turned out. After that, many conversations with donors and ticket buyers from that period lost the engagement from the company.
Mm-hmm.
So whether they knew it then when they were recruiting, they being the search committee, for Fort Worth Opera, whether they knew it then, now it has been uncovered or it has been unveiled that they needed someone in this role who could heal this community through
Mm.
the work of the opera.
Mm.
And that is very much the hill I am happy to die on, because I came to this industry I came to this industry because someone in Amarillo knew the importance of community engagement. And they came to my church, came to my school, came to the community center. And that's how I learned what opera is and what Amarillo Opera was. And so it's so embedded in me that it's one of the most important things and really the cornerstone of my vision for this company and my hope and my dream and my goals for this company is to be the people's company.
I love that. I think
You
it's a
know,
wonderful.
it's like you experience, our colleagues experience, sing, yeah, it's like, what we experience when you sing in a European house and you have fest singers who are
Mm,
they are that company's singer. And so therefore the community who embodies that company feels like that soprano or that tenor is
mm,
theirs.
mm.
Like they know exactly who they are, they know where they go for lunch and coffee and X, Y, and Z. And so I want everyone in this community of Fort Worth to know who Fort Worth Opera is and to feel like they own a piece of this company.
I think that that's a one. You know what you were describing about the Hispanic thing or the black thing, and then it's sort of that template is very recognizable across the country. And it's a good start. I mean, let's give it credit for what it
Mm-hmm,
does. But what you're talking about is actually saying, okay, if that works, then why isn't the next step that is actually incorporating into the sense of community? Why is not the neighborhood
mm-hmm,
idea being enlivened? And that's something that bothers me a lot about the arts dilemma at the moment, if we can be tactful about it. I mean, financially, the COVID pandemic has been a decimation of the artist
mm-hmm,
community. I mean, you have 1,200 plus orchestras standing still quiet and unemployed across the country as just the tip of the iceberg. Clearly there's just been a complete negation, as if that's some sort of ad hoc elective activity that some rarefied folks like to get into. And right
mm-hmm,
now we're trying to save lives by getting a vaccine, and we need to get our businesses open because, as if that's all unconnected. And what you're talking about is goes to the heart of where we're at right now. It goes to the hearts of what my belief is, and yours obviously too, that the arts and humanities are the diary of who we are. It's the essence of understanding who we are, so that we do feel a community. I mean, it is the
mm-hmm,
heart of the E pluribus unum motto. Out of the diversity there is a collective recognition of us as a community.
mm-hmm,
People, I think, people of factious, provincial, in my opinion, and very fundamentalist beliefs, and I don't mean just religious, I mean also political, take
mm-hmm,
e pluribus unum and they turn it around as if it's trying to make a cookie cutter society out of all of us, as if it's about homogenization. And
mm-hmm.
that's exactly what it is not
No.
about. And I don't know any other. Well, I don't even know why we have to look for anything other. Isn't that the fundamental value of the arts and humanities, ergo the performing arts? Where else do you go as a collective of community, of individuals, to enliven the sense of not only who you are, but who you're with, and a healthy notion of where your life can go? I mean, as community as the experience is in opera, it's still extraordinarily individual. It's none of my
Mm-hmm,
business as an artist what someone thinks of the Winterreise or of Traviata. My job is to make sure that it is the Winterreise and Traviata and or, so that someone can have that personal relationship in a community environment. Does that sound right to you?
absolutely.
I
I
don't mean to
mean,
preach here. You just got me going with all your beautiful ideas. I'm just so
no.
behind you. It's wonderful.
Yeah, my daddy is a preacher, so I know all
Well,
about preaching.
well, sorry. Hey, Dad. I'm a daddy. I'm a granddaddy, and I tend to preach. So my apologies to my public here, but they know me already. It's like when somebody invites
No
me to give a
worries.
speech. Well, Mr. Hampson, would you say a few words? And my reaction is, if you want a few words, invite somebody else.
I have a whole
Anyway.
lot of words. That's so true because, we as performers, as individuals who have sought out to have this experience as a performer we are having very individualized experiences. We get on stage with X number of people, X number of chorus, supporting cast, whatever, but we are having a very individual experience, about
Mm-hmm.
what it is that we are offering. And so to think that the experience for the opera goer should be homogenous or monolithic in a way is crazy, because you could have someone who is sitting in seat two completely bawling their eyes out at whatever and having this emotional surge of their individual experience. And they could be sitting next to someone who's hysterically laughing, and they're sitting next to someone who's stone cold, but their experiences are different in the three, but what
Exactly.
brought them there is the
Exactly.
unification. What brought them there. And I love that you say, the arts and humanities, because that's the part that we are missing sometimes is the humanities of it.
Mm.
And also when you say, that having a program like Noches de Opera or any other program that any company would have that is tapping into the community that deserves to have that experience that they otherwise would not be given.
Mm.
That is just the start.
Right.
If you are not going deeper into the community, going beyond the school, because that's where most people go. They go to the school because it's the easiest place to go. They put on
Right.
a, children's opera theater piece or what have you, and then they stop there. If you're not going beyond the school, if you're not going to the community centers, if you're not going to the religious houses of worship or whatever, if you're not going to the basketball courts, if you're not going to the
Retirement homes.
playground, if you're not going to the assisted living and retirement homes, you are
Thank you very
missing
much.
that huge back end of what is just the tip of the iceberg.
But
And
Afton, when
mhm,
I was a young singer, that was all just self-understood. I cannot tell you how many assisted living communities I went to, how many hospitals I went to, how many shopping centers. I think the first time I ever sang Silvio in Pagliacci, the big scene with another soprano, we were standing outside of a Bon Marché in a mall in Southern California. I mean, and we were just went in, put the piano, had some costumes, and we started singing. That's what we did in the USC Opera Workshop, and people would just stop and gather, and by the end of the scene, we probably had 250 people standing in there just going, wow, and what's this all about? And then somebody would talk about it, and why? I mean, I think those kinds of activities are extremely useful, and it's. I mean, you have such a well. Let's get off this a minute. What can we do along the repertoire lines? I mean,
mhm.
Porgy and Bess is fine, and we all know it's a monumental, wonderful piece, and we can call it an opera. We can have all those discussions. We can have white people and black people singing, all of that kind of stuff. But what about all the opera about black subjects? What about
Mhm.
all the opera written by black composers? Can we
Mhm.
just have a look at the 10 or 11 operas that Grant Still wrote? Just
Mhm.
just for the hell of it, I mean,
Let's just pull them out and have a read through. Like let's
yeah.
and it's not let's also educate. Let's oh, calm down, Afton. Let's also educate. Let's also take it even a step further because part of I feel my responsibility to my community that we serve at Fort Worth and with Fort Worth Opera is to educate, to
Yeah.
provide an educational component, not about what a half note is, a quarter note, whatever, but to provide that educational component that, yes, Porgy and Bess is what it is, but here are 20 other phenomenal Black composers who wrote stories from the Black perspective about
Right.
Black individuals and the
Right.
Black experience.
Right.
And that's just literally the tip of the iceberg. I said to someone the other day, I said, we are a year into this pandemic. Can you imagine the stories that
Yeah.
are waiting to be told or that are probably on paper, that are waiting to be heard, to be spoken to? I could cry thinking about it, that are waiting to be sung, experiences written, individual, here we are again, individual experiences written by these individual creatives, whether they are Black,
Yeah.
Indigenous,
Yeah.
people of color, whoever. It is
Right.
their experience from their perspective. You know, if I had all the money in the world, if I had, Amazon money, you know, Microsoft money, I would bet on that. I would
I agree.
absolutely provide that resource for these creatives who have been in confinement, who have been in quarantine, who have been bottled up, because the beauty of the art that is waiting to be released from these stories, we all ought to be in line waiting for someone to drop a new libretto, waiting for someone to drop a new
And,
piece.
and and before everybody thinks that we're just harping on the tough stories here, think of all the moments of unbelievable compassion that
Hmm.
have been gathering over the last 10 or 12 months. I mean, we get hammered every day in the news with the statistics, and it's awful. It's inexcusable that our country has over a 500,000 dead people. This is just crazy.
Yeah.
But we can get into all that. It's like talking about the statistics of the art. Yes, the arts generate $877 billion in our GDP every year, and why aren't we yada yada yada? That doesn't, what I want to talk about is who said that the arts are less a food for people necessary for their survival than the food they buy in the store. Who got that idea going? Who stole that idea from people? If I always say, if you have to get into the arts and humanities, somebody stole them from you in the first place, because
Hmm.
there's no other blueprint, and this belongs to a civil society. This is the civil right. The building of minds to understand who they are in this world is a civil right.
Hmm.
And that's where the arts and humanities lie. That is what I think the founding fathers were talking about when they said the pursuit of happiness.
Mm.
Happiness in that context is a metaphor for contentment, for
Mm.
balanced life, for perception of a bigger a bigger equanimity, if you will, in which you are a part of. This is the balance of the word happiness. Happiness is actually a quite young word. It came into use actually in Shakespeare's time, which is not very long ago
Mm.
in that sense.
Yeah.
And the coining of that phrase, to me, just jumps. And I think the opera, as you were saying, I think the world of opera has so much passion and story involved, which galvanizes the sense of collective.
Hmm.
For me, opera is about dilemma, not about plot. We're going to
Everyone,
go
yeah,
and
has
see
a
the.
problem.
Yeah, let's go see. Let's go work this out. It may be euphoria, maybe jealous, maybe hatred, maybe what, maybe victims. There's always fate on top of it, and so forth. The other thing is that there is no such thing in opera that isn't historically based in some way. It's like looking at a
Hmm.
slice
I'm not sure
of
I
life, and that's
understand.
where I was going with in how much you can do with repertoire, because rather than just having the vignettes of this or that culture, oh yeah, golly gosh, guess what? The Latina X also gets to have their operatic moment. That actually you're taking in various ways pieces of our collective history, if you were, and putting that on stage. Will you have that kind of flexibility to do that at the Fort Worth Opera?
Absolutely, because I'll make it my own flexibility, right?
Yeah.
But Joe Illick, who is the
Yeah.
artistic director, he and I like align like this on
Perfect.
the need for the inclusivity of storytelling and who's telling the story, right?
That's
Like
a
there's
fabulous.
so
That's a
much to
fat. I
be.
got to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I don't interrupt you. That is a wonderful sentence. The inclusivity of storytelling and who's telling the story. That's great.
Mhm.
I just wanted to land on that. I'll shut up.
No, yeah. No, no, no. It's so true because so much can be taught, shared through the wonderful traditional pieces that we have that we all know and love, Così fan tutte, and the historic part of that. But also imagine the opportunity to shift the paradigm, if you will, with the casting of something, the
Hmm.
casting of that to show that it is, while yes, written by Mozart, who we all know who he is, and the story of the lineage of his life and his prolificness, but that his stories don't have to be told from the perspective of an all white cast or,
Mm.
what have you.
Mm.
We did a piece called Stone Soup. It was our children's opera theater piece. And so the story of Stone Soup is this young girl is, lost in the desert, really. She's wandering, she's very hungry. She stumbles upon this town. She thinks there's a corner store. She thinks that she can find some food in there. And everyone from the town comes together to put one ingredient into this pot to make this soup. The town is on hard times. It's basically like a drought. So Mark Campbell and Joe Illick wrote this version of Stone Soup and specifically said that they wanted Sally, the young soprano role, to be sung by a Black soprano. Because going back like 3 minutes ago, what you said about compassion, the whole point about Stone Soup is the compassion of this city, of this town, for this young
Mm-hmm.
girl who needed something to eat. She needed something to eat. And the lyrics of this show are about literally feeding the soul with this stone soup. They put stones in this water, they create this soup, they all eat from it, and they all are better for it. They all feel more satiated from eating this stone soup. Anyways, so like that is like a whole thing, like definitely there. And in terms of like repertoire, using the opportunity to speak history in a different way with casting, right? I keep saying to myself every time I see them together, I'm like, I need to go raise some more money so I can have them on my stage. Every time I see Larry Brownlee and Nicole Heaston together on stage, they've done a Elixir duet, both of those duets a few times in different concerts. And every time I say to myself, I need some more money. I need to raise some money so I can have them on my stage because that would be an amazing bomb elixir of love. Like to have those two individuals telling this love story, which, if I can get a little bit churchy with you, as black folks in this country, we very rarely see ourselves portrayed positively, in a positive light, and in a functional love kind of situation. Very rarely. And while they go through some, turmoil, dilemma, in Elixir of Love, their love story is very sweet. And so to be able to even just subconsciously place those nuggets in the minds of a community who don't see themselves portrayed on stage hardly ever, maybe, but also to see them portrayed in this way where it is this positive light. That's also why we had a great initiative and partnership with the Met, and we were able to HD broadcast. And I selected some good ones. We had Akhenaten, we had Bohème because everybody loves a Bohème, but I also selected Daughter of the Regiment with Pretty Yundie. Bottom, like point blank in the period. I was in the house at the Met when she sang that role, and during the speaking part, she speaks in her native tongue. I was floored. She speaks in her native tongue with clicks in Afrikaans. I was completely floored. And when I
Wow.
saw that on the list, I thought it's serendipitous. I must do this for no other reason but to show this extremely beautiful and talented singer, but also to have this part of her history embedded in Donizetti.
Wow.
Like that is a cake meant for everyone's consumption. And
Wow.
I don't know if even if it's my own subtlety of what, I'm hoping to try to feed and to give back and to just, pump that IV slowly but surely. And then suddenly, you have a full to life, thing again.
Well, I see now why articles write about you as a force of nature. Look, we're looking your screen here. We're looking at is the inside of the beautiful Bass Hall in Fort Worth. Is your pit orchestra the wonderful Fort Worth Orchestra?
Yes.
Wow, that's
It is
fantastic.
the Fort Worth Symphony Orchestra. Yes.
Fort Worth Symphony Orchestra. That's
Yes.
what. Now, I mean, in full disclosure, I've had conversations about opera houses and being involved at some higher echelon in it and so forth. And I've always been rather cynical and said, people think that, oh, it's, casting annoying voices and all that kind of stuff. But actually, the intendant, as we call you, the general director, is essentially raising money and convincing the unions that you have none. and whether or not the
Very true.
magical tenor walks onto your stage for an audition or not, those moments are few and far between, Or you're sitting over dinner with Mr. Illick going, oh, why don't we do X Ypsilon? And then you take it back to your board and the board says, huh? No, no, why can't we have another
Yeah.
Bohème? So, I mean, is that a little bit of the reality
Mhm.
check you live in?
It is a lot of the reality check, right? It is balancing between those worlds of catering to an audience who knows and wants the everyday kind of tune hitters, right? And the things that keep people coming back, and they can walk out of the theater humming that tune. And balancing that with a responsibility we have to also invite people or to experience another experiential way
Right.
of music, of 20th, 21st century music, of modern day stories, of thought-provoking even, stories and music that makes you feel and experience that visceral experience in a different way that, might make you a little bit uncomfortable, that might have you leaving the theater thinking, like those really good movies that end and you're like, what
Oh,
happened?
oh, oh.
Yeah, that make you think that, and so it is that balancing act and something, that one in my position and I do have to balance really delicately because I don't want to alienate the audience that loves their Bohème, loves their Norma, loves their this, that, and the other. Although I probably will never be able to give people a Wagner piece, but they love all of those war horses. But there's a whole other subset of audience that are younger, that are more
Yeah.
what's the word I want? Uh, Not
Curious?
excited, curious. They are more innovative. They want to try things. They want to have an experience that they can tweet about, that they can post on, Facebook and Instagram. They want to have an experience. And if we're not tapping into that market, if we are not
True.
tapping into that audience, then we are cutting ourselves off at the knee because everyone else over here are of a certain age range and might be at the twilight of their years, and we all come here to do one thing, which is to die. It's very morbid to think that, but it's the truth. And if we're not doing our work to build this pipeline, if you will, of an audience that will grow with you as a company, then you're you're not doing
What's your?
the right work.
I agree with you. What's your young artist program like? What kind of investment can you make? What kind of young artist community? And where I'm going with this is that I obviously want to become more. I am more involved, and I'm becoming more and more involved in pedagogy, which is a wonderful thrill. And I love being part of, and have been for 25 years. The development of young artists is nothing more addicting than being with a young artist and have that epiphanal aha moment,
Oh yeah.
and sharing that. I love that. But in terms of this pandemic and giving young people the opportunity to perform, I guess I just go back into my days and think, well, the Music Academy of the West and USC, and starting out, good. My career went very quickly. I went overseas and things kind of went, but they still went. They still went block on block on block. I built very fast, and I was lucky. But there was just a lot of opportunity the scenes here, the staged scenes, that used to be what we did. You didn't have to do all of Così fan tutte. You could do a 90-minute
Hmm.
così. You could do a half an hour Così fan tutte. I just did a project like that in Zurich. But for instance, if you have a nice group of young professionals, there's no reason why you can't take a significant part of Bohème to the mall. Kind of thing. I'm sure you must be planning those kinds of, but also not just the standard repertoire.
Hmm.
How about a concertant? If I was running an opera house in America, I would insist that at least a quarter of the entire repertoire is dedicated to American music. The
Mm.
American creativity of our history is something we're extremely reluctant to embrace. We listen to something, we say, oh, that was from the 30s. Oh yeah, that sounds like the 30s. I want to do that. I just don't understand that.
Yeah.
I just and there's not just black opera. It's
Yeah.
American opera. There in the late 20s, early 30s, there used to be the David Bispham Award, which was
Mm.
awarded to the best opera production of that year, which meant, can you imagine how many that meant that were
Wow.
being created every year? And then you
Right.
get, and then you find out that in that award process, just for American opera, absolutely none of the composers were black.
Mm.
And that's what I mean by this parallel universe. We know all about Copland, we know all about Barber, we know about Babbitt, we know all that. And who the hell knows about, again, William Grant Still? We're
Hmm.
having a wonderful revival of Florence Price. That's wonderful. Margaret Bonds, and those are wonderful concert things. But what about the actual singing arts that
Hmm.
is so developed in the Latin community? The indigenous community, it's a bit more difficult. I don't
Yeah.
know, that's more of a pageant world and a ritual world, which, and I don't mean to be in the least versed in it. I want to explore that. I would like to know that. But how can we find ways? How about a concertant? How about a concert series and just sing the scores? You know,
Yeah.
let's just have a
I mean,
listen.
it's le like a radio show.
Yeah,
Our resident artist program um, is, as someone who's gone through a lot of them, young artist
yeah.
programs,
No, you're perfect.
our our resident artist program is really close to me in a way that I want to make sure that we are, like you said, one of those building blocks, that we are building the blocks for
Mm,
this young person to go on to the next thing. And whether the next thing is singing a role somewhere, or another, training program, or, taking on a contract in Europe, what have you, but that we are preparing them with a bag, a suitcase of just endless tools. And those
mm.
endless tools come from singing all types of repertoire. When I was a young artist, I sang things that I didn't want to sing, that I didn't know that I could sing, that I didn't know that I didn't want to sing. Like, I had to learn so much music. And it was to stretch my mind and to stretch my voice, and by what I mean by stretch my voice, right? Uh, to stretch it beyond what I thought that I should be singing,
Yeah, sure.
to stretch me as a human, and my curiosity to want to learn more about composers, and want to dissect more into a genre or a time period. And
Mm.
so with our resident artist program, I've said to Joe, yes, we want them to be able to have stage time, to cover roles, to, sing comprimario roles, but they also need to be the serving appendage of this company when we don't have anything
Absolutely.
on stage,
Absolutely.
right back there, right? They are the ones who are our biggest advocates. They are the ones who are walking, talking, singing billboards of what we have to offer. And they are the ones who are really faced with the role of engaging the community in this experience, engaging them in what opera is, what it can be, what classical performing arts might look like, right? And so not only do they need to have a tool bag of Mozart and Handel and all of those, composers and pieces that we know, but they also need to have a tool bag of new modern opera, new modern music, uh,
Absolutely.
new works. It is not, 154. It is not that. It is mind stretching, to stretch their
Mm.
minds, to be able to be flexible and amiable to a conductor, to a composer, to think about having a living composer in the room with you while you're workshopping their piece and they're like,
It,
something
it
doesn't sound right. Let me rewrite this right quick.
incredibly
Here, go
thrilling
sing
experience.
that.
Yeah.
And to be able to have the, the aptitude to be able to do that, is
It
something that
also
we have to
it,
take that responsibility to do.
that experience, and you and I've had that, and I've done an awful lot of modern music, and work with composers and have a lot of good composer friends and all that. But it also informs you about the bits of music with the dead guys that doesn't work. There's connective tissue
Right.
in Donizetti, in Verdi, even Holy Mozart that's like, can we just lose those 8 bars? And I am convinced that if Mozart were sitting there, I say, yeah, it doesn't work. If you're going to do that, don't do that. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to be clear about it. I'm not trying to rewrite Mozart and God, holy, forgive me, but it is an informative experience to the practicality of the
Hmm.
storytelling. What are you
Hmm.
trying to communicate here and physically? But this all sounds. I want to ask you a couple of questions. I was going to do some screen sharing. Everybody, you need to go to the Fort Worth Opera website and just check out and anything that Afton Battle, her interviews and all this wonderful stuff. But I want to ask you two questions. First of all, just because Susan Graham is one of my oldest, closest colleagues and friends, what is Three Decembers? What's that all about?
Three Decembers is a co-production that we're doing with Opera San Jose.
Okay.
And I was introduced to this by Corey, who is the general director at Opera San Jose. So Three Decembers is an opera that was created, produced, directed for film. So Opera San Jose took Jake Hagee's Three Decembers and produced it for film. And so
Wow.
it is a virtual performance of Three Decembers in the studio with Susan Graham and M- mm, Maya
I can look.
Karani and
Yeah, yeah.
Efren Solis.
How good for you. Yeah.
Yeah, so it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. It's a really great piece. It's only an hour and a half. It's a chamber opera piece, which for this time of virtual programming, an hour and a half of anything, looking at a screen and a small screen or a big screen is really like where we found people have the most time or bandwidth mentally. But it's this chamber piece and it's really beautiful. The story is so touching and compassionate, and uh, Terrence McNally's it's based off of his piece, Some Christmas Letters, and
Ah.
it's a really thought-provoking piece that has so much relevance with death and mortality within the piece and personally, right, within the loss of Terrence
Wow.
McNally, and then also as a society, the loss of all of these wonderful people who've lost their lives to COVID, 500, half a million individuals. So I'm really happy to have made this connection with Opera San Jose. And this is when I first arrived. And so it's streaming online March. It streams until April 2nd.
The other question I want to ask you is, tell me about Black Theater Coalition.
Oh gosh, yes, Black Theater Coalition. So during the COVID, the about July or so, I was introduced to T. Oliver Reed and Warren Adams, who are the co-founders of Black Theater Coalition. We had conversations about the inequities that are present in and on Broadway and the American theater, and how in this time of Broadway being shut down, theater being shut down across the board, how we could move the needle in an impactful way to change the environmental ecosystem of theater. And it is a great program that is starting a fellowship program that will place Black creatives in roles, working roles, paid fellowship. That is very important. Within the theater. So that is general management, marketing, advertising, all of those behind the scenes folks who work in theater. They are doing tremendously well. And my passion with that company and with that organization is being a bridge or a liaison, being a war horse, being an advocate for equity within all of the performing arts and theaters and all of the performing arts as an umbrella. When we at Fort Worth Opera produced A Night of Black Excellence, I produced that show with this same theory in mind. Was I wanted to create a concert, a show that was created by Black creatives, produced by Black creatives, starred Black creatives, managed by et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because it is this ecosystem of individuals who are not always given the opportunity to do anything other than maybe be on stage. And sometimes we're not even given the opportunity to do that. And so the inequity that plagues a little bit our industry goes both ways. It is, we have equity issues in opera. There are equity issues in theater. There are equity issues in orchestras. There are equity issues, and this is a huge one. We could talk about it a whole different time, in higher education, that then spits out these young singers. You know, there are equity issues across the board. And I wanted to do and want to do and will continue to do my part to help to move the needle and solve for those equity problems and bring equity, true equity, to my company, to help to bring it to and with colleagues, and to bring it to my community in a way that is sustainable, impactful, resource driven, and holistic. That is a holistic change for the community and everyone who's involved in it.
You take my breath away.
Well,
It's
thank you.
wonderful. Afton, it's wonderful, and I truly hope that actually, I mean, everything you say about Fort Worth and your community and so forth, but in fact, liaising like-minded opera companies across the country with this embedded mission is what we need in our country as well. And I wish you that. I wish you all that contact, and I'll say it publicly and with all my heartfelt support. If there's any possible way I can be of any help to anything you're doing, you have to let me know, because you've got it. You've got your finger on the pulse of what is necessary and what is right today. God bless.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I will absolutely take you up on your offer. I would love nothing more than to greet you to this stage or any stage that Fort Worth Opera is performing on. It would be a huge honor for me
Well,
to be able to host you.
I wasn't trying to so aggrandizingly get myself some work, but I also met it in a Walt Whitman-esque Langston Hughes bonding of America essentialities, and that's what I really meant. That's not to say that I wouldn't gladly come back to Fort Worth. I love the community. By the way, I want to ask you, with your Texas governor now sort of flaunting or fly, I don't mean that so sarcastically, but I mean he's decided he's going to open up the state, and here we go.
Mhm.
How's that going to? Is he going to be able to do that? Do you think? And I'm not trying to get into political dynamics here. I really want to know what impact that will have. Do you believe on the arts
Mm.
community in Texas in general, much less your own?
Yeah, absolutely. He is doing it. It is happening today. Um, was the day. The impact in the arts community. I have been heartwarmed to see my colleagues across all genres, across all mediums, of the arts community here in Fort Worth, museums, art centers, all of it, to say that they will continue to do what they feel is right for their business and for their
Right,
patrons and for their staff. I
right,
have been so heartwarmed by that. Um, this is a very dangerous position that the governor of Texas has put Texans in. Dangerous because we are now faced with our individual decisions on how to move forward. Do you open your office? Let's just start there, right? I have a staff, you
yeah,
know, who are desperate for interaction with their colleagues, do you open your office? If you do, what are the protocols and procedures? We just start there. Then you go a step further and you take to the performing arts venues. We are a resident company of Bass Hall. Do they open their doors? At 100%? Absolutely not. At some capacity, that's their decision to make, and so it's this very dangerous position that they've put us in. I stand very firm that we are very much in this pandemic. It is not going anywhere. Praise God for the vaccine. I cannot wait to get mine. However, I will continue to act responsibly for myself, my
mm,
parents who live here in Fort Worth, the community that I serve, and my staff to say we will continue to abide by, uh, we will follow CDC guidance. We will continue to wear
bravo,
masks. You
bravo,
all will continue to work from home remotely. There's nothing that we need to do that requires us to be
right.
in an office space. Um, and so for the performing arts community, the Fort Worth Symphony Orchestra has been performing for a while now at one of the bigger venues. But my other colleagues are steadfast, and I so appreciate that because it is that sense of community and camaraderie across that line
Right.
that really gives me, as the new kid on the block, some real strong arms to hook into. Other than that, I I pray for these small business owners who are now faced with outside, people literally coming in who have now this, white flag, if you will, of the government, of the governor
Right.
saying, I don't have to wear this thing. But you, as an individual small business owner, are telling me I have to. So it's just a very dangerous situation. And I hope that it does not endanger anyone's business, well being, health, personal, body, and safety. And so I just hope that those who want to take the liberty and not wear their face coverings, totally their prerogative, but that we remain mindful of one another, um, based on
You
your
know,
own
I,
individual
you've
choices
said
you
it.
make.
You've said it so beautifully, and as an administrator, articulately and wonderful. I could just tell you from the sidelines, I just don't understand all this brouhaha about a mask. I just, so put the damn mask on. What I mean, Are you serious? I mean, I also feel like there's a certain level that says, "Oh, whatever, I really need to walk around outside with it," or. But on the other hand, what I don't understand in America, and yes, I'm speaking as American, is that being social minded is not being socialist.
Hmm.
And I just don't. I wear a mask out of respect and concern for everybody else. I'm not sick. I'm not going to get sick. Knock on wood, but I'm very careful. I think everybody is trying to be more careful now. On the other hand, the numbers keep leaking. Here in Europe, we're going nuts. Why can't we
Hmm.
get on top of this thing? And
Yeah.
and one lockdown after the other. I mean, we've been in some phase of something in some country. I'm in Italy. I have an apartment in Switzerland. I've been in Austria. They just don't. The whole vaccine thing
Hmm.
is just a mess.
Yeah.
Without they get on top of it. I'm not trying to harp on this, but it just seems like the least you can do if you're
The
going to the,
least.
the bank is wear a mask so that we're not, we're just and stay a little bit from other people and you don't have to shake hands. And by the way, this whole Asian hospitality thing that we sometimes make fun of
Eh,
actually originated because of the concern for germs, bacteria, and disease several hundred years ago. So
yes, and the
let's
same with
can
the
we
cultural
yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know how many, back in the
with the
day when
cultural
I went,
dynamic of wearing a
exactly.
mask.
I mean, when some of the first things you ever hear from colleagues that sing for the first time or perform for the first time in Japan is, yeah, it was a little bit strange. I mean, I went down there in the fall and I sang some concerts with Savalish back in the day and the NHA Orchestra, and I would say a third of the public were in surgical masks.
Mhm.
Why? Because they had the flu or they had a cold or they were coughing. I found that incredibly moving. I just thought, wow, thank you, wonderful.
Sympathetic and empathetic, right? And mindful and conscious and respectful. That's what you said, out of respect,
Yeah.
respectful.
So if the governor of a state says, in fact, the state believes in the CDC guidelines, and I guess Americans just get crazy when the word mandate comes up or
Hmm.
something, and okay, I get that, so forth and so on, but on the other hand, it is a collective decision that we will all be better off if we all have masks. And of course, then
Yes.
to see these eruptions in Walmart or someplace where people get into fisticuffs and I mean shopping cart fury because somebody said put your damn mask on. I mean, you can't impinge on my freedom. I just don't get it.
I just
I just don't. I don't get it.
I don't get it. The whole face covering and mask thing was politicized from day one, and that is part of the problem. But and that is also what I mean when I say that this is a very dangerous situation in Texas and Mississippi, and I think Wyoming was another governor who just did away with the mask mandate. Is that we are putting lives of individuals in danger. You know, Walmart says we don't care what the governor says. We require our patrons to wear a mask when they come in, but then patron X decides not to. That puts the Walmart employee or the greeter or whomever, the manager, in a dangerous position to
Oh,
try to
sure.
enforce their
Yeah.
requirement against someone who,
Can we
you
have
know,
security on aisle two? We have an arrest pending, and I mean, it just, it's
it's
just,
just nuts. And, literally a year ago, you know, I was I was in South America on holiday a year ago at the end of February. I was living my very best life in Chile and Argentina and Uruguay. Came back, went to New York on business, came back from New York to Chicago at the time, and then got shut down
yeah,
literally a year ago today.
yeah.
And we have been in this country in some form of that, as you've said, for 12 months. And we've learned to adapt and for the better for some of us, right? Many companies are saving crazy overhead on office space because they're like, we're just going to keep working from home. Um, you know, a company like Fort Worth Opera, actually, our COVID silver lining is that because we can't perform in Bass Hall or any other hall, we've been forced to go out on
Yeah.
our mobile opera truck.
Right.
So boom, there we go. It's great. We now have all of this virtual online content that you can see, that someone in California can see, and
Right.
it's coming from Fort Worth, Texas. So, those types of beautiful things have bloomed and blossomed. But at the end of the day, I want this pandemic to be under control, the same as most people. And I want us to be able to be in an environment where we can experience things live in person if we so
Right.
choose. And
Right.
personally, selfishly, I want to get out of this country and go on holiday again. So I want that for all of us. I want to not have to sit in my bathroom and take phone calls. I mean, I want to breathe again, and it's something as rudimentary as hugging, right? Like, I want to see my best friends and hug them. It's so,
True.
it is the humanity part, that is like
Yeah.
the human part of that. And I want to do it in a way that doesn't put them obviously in danger or myself. So like for the, for the, for the love of God, listen,
There you are.
I'm going to wear my double
Afton,
mask.
Afton Battle. What a wonderful conversation. Great to meet you. Great to share your philosophy, your mission, your accomplishments to date. And I want to have a conversation at least once a year as you move through your progressions here. God help me, I'll be doing IDAGIO interviews in a year as well. Actually, I'm coming up on my first year anniversary. I have to think of something. But my point is,
Happy
like I said,
anniversary.
wind in your sails. Good luck. It's wonderful for all of us to meet you. And I know we could keep on going, but we're not. Thank you for sharing so much time with us. And ladies and gentlemen, all I can say is, share this Idagio Live interview with Afton Battle with as many people that you can, and anyone interested in the arts in general, and specifically the arts in America. This is a wonderful human being in a wonderful position with her face clearly in the future because she's anchored in the present. And that's wonderful. Thank you very much, Afton Battle.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been a great pleasure. My pleasure.
Good night, everybody. See you next week.
Good night.